Hello again everyone, and welcome back to Japan Vintage Camera. You can see I'm wearing this really cool Hawaiian shirt, and that can only mean that I'm still in Hawaii. Today is Thursday, July 28th, and luckily I am scheduled to return to Japan on Saturday, July 30th. I finally got my negative PCR test and the necessary documents to return to Japan, and I'm quite happy to be able to go back home. When we were planning our vacation to Hawaii, I was thinking how wonderful it would be to spend 2 weeks here. 2 weeks is a lot longer than what we usually spend on an overseas vacation. And I was looking forward to really going out and enjoying the sights and sounds and having fun with my family and just living it up in Hawaii. Of course, I didn't expect to spend an entire month here, nor did I expect to have to spend a week in bed, kind of in isolation. But as I said in my previous video, there are worse places to have to spend a month than in Hawaii. Since I'm going to be returning this Saturday, I'm going to reopen my store tonight. And for those of you who have been sending me messages asking when I'm going to reopen, tonight is the time. So please check later on, and you should be able to buy cameras, and I'll be able to start shipping these out on Monday. I will be returned to Japan on Sunday night, and hopefully everything should be back to normal by Monday. No doubt I'm going to be experiencing a little bit of jet lag and all that, but hopefully that'll rather keep me awake during the days than keep me sleepy. The reason I'm holding a camera here is I thought I would do another quick description, or maybe not so quick description, of the Yashica Rookie. And the reason I'm doing this is because while I was kind of stuck in bed and having nothing to do, I was looking around a lot on the internet and on television, and I came across an old Japanese movie from 1959. The English title is called Floating Weeds. This is a very interesting, colorful, and artistic movie. Really nice movie to watch, especially for people who are interested in, I guess, a very traditional Japanese kind of story. And this movie was filmed in 1959 and takes place in, southwestern Japan is where I understand it was filmed. And the movie is about a troupe of kabuki actors who travel around the country doing performances at the various small theaters. And this was a really big thing back in the day, and there were a few of these troupes running around. Well, you might ask what a movie like this has to do with something like a Yashica Rookie twin-lens reflex camera. But in the first parts of this movie, the troupe is traveling around in the bottom of this really old beat-up boat, and it's taking them to the place where they're going to do their next performance. And the actors are sitting in the hull of this boat, and it's midsummer, and it's super hot, and everyone is sweating, and they're getting ready to arrive at their next town. And among all the junk that they are carrying, I happen to notice a Yashica Rookie camera in its leather case. And I guess one of the traveling actors in the troupe enjoyed taking photographs of the different places which they visited. So that's what kind of gave me the idea of making another Yashica video. And also because I happen to have this one on hand with me here in Hawaii. I wasn't planning on bringing a camera, but for whatever the reason, I happen to have it, and so I thought I would do a story or another video about it. For those of you who are interested in the movie itself, I really recommend it. You might enjoy seeing what Japan was like and what the older people here kind of call the golden age of modern Japan. This is kind of the post-war era when Japan was a freer place than what it had been previously, and when things were looking good and the economy was taking off, and I guess it was a more optimistic time. So yeah, if you happen to see this movie, I happen to come across it, I recommend watching it. Coincidental thing about this movie is one of the actresses in the movie married one of Japan's most famous architects, and he happens to be the same architect who designed the Tokyo National Art Center, which sits right next to Aoyama Park, and a place where I often like to make camera videos. And in some of my video clips, I've included scenes of the Tokyo National Art Center. So it's kind of interesting the way everything fits together. So anyway, let's go ahead and take a good look at the Yashica Rookie twin-lens reflex camera built in Japan in the mid-1950s. So the Yashica Rookie was kind of a simplified version of the Yashica A, which was the most popular camera Yashica was making at this time. Yashica had just gotten into making 35mm cameras in those days. They were making a very simple camera called the Yashica 35, which was a simple fixed lens rangefinder camera. And they had also bought the Nikka camera company and were producing some Leica mount interchangeable lens rangefinder cameras. They produced those for a couple of years, and I'm not really sure why they bought the Nikka camera company, because they didn't really use anything from Nikka in the later years. They produced the Nikka Yashica cameras for a couple of years and then just started making their own Yashica factory-built cameras. But anyway, the Yashica Rookie was very popular in Japan because it was a dual format camera. Besides shooting in the 6x6 format, it could shoot in the 6x45 format. And the advantage of the 6x45 format is it allowed you to get 4 extra exposures on a roll of film, which made it a more economical camera to shoot. And the Japanese are probably the most economical people in the world. And in the mid and late 1950s, they were even more economical because wages back then weren't very high, and the economy was still growing, and you really had to make every yen count. So cameras like this, 645 folding cameras, twin lens reflex cameras, or half frame 35mm cameras were quite popular in Japan. This particular camera is very interesting in that it still has the original 645 mask in it, which is really hard to find. Most people who bought these cameras didn't bother with this 6x45 format. They simply took out this 6x45 mask and put it somewhere and lost it, and ended up becoming a permanent 6x6 camera. Fortunately, this camera still has the 6x45 mask. And the 6x45 format is a really good format. It's a good format for shooting landscapes. As I mentioned before, it gives you more exposures on a roll of film. And it's just a good feature to have. Fuji made some 6x45 medium format cameras recently. These were quite expensive cameras. But despite their sophistication, they don't offer a whole lot more in performance over these more primitive cameras. One thing which these cameras usually included to go with the 6x45 format was a 6x45 mask for the sports finder. I have never seen one of these masks. I've looked and looked. I've gotten 2 of these cameras. I've sold more than 150 of these Yashica Rookies through my store, and I have acquired 2 new ones. And believe it or not, it's still possible here in Japan to find brand new cameras from the 1950s and 1960s. Even in these camera boxes, I wasn't able to find the mask. So all I can determine is that these were an extra cost feature, which no one ever bought. If you bought one of these cameras, you could order the sports mask at the camera shop, but apparently very few people or no one bothered to order them, and so I simply have never seen one. Not that it matters much, very few people even then used the sports finders in these cameras, and most professional photographers in those days had already moved on to other types of cameras. 35mm cameras were quite popular when the Yashica Rookie was produced. So let's go ahead and take a look at the other features and functions. I'll go ahead and take off the lens cap here. We have a 80mm f3.5 Yashica lens. What this is it basically just a Tomioka tri-Lausar lens. It's the exact same formula. I've interchanged elements between the tri-Lausar and the Yashica lens and gone out and shot with it, and they're exactly the same. You can mix and match the elements between the tri-Lausar and Yashica lens, and it still works fine. If you have a buggered up tri-Lausar lens in a classic TLR camera, and you come across an old Yashica TLR, which has the Yashica lens, which isn't damaged, you can simply swap the lens elements from one camera to the other. We have the taking lens on the bottom, we have the viewing lens on the top. Around the taking lens, we have the shutter assembly. We have a shutter speed ring here, which gives you a range of speeds from B to 1/300th of a second. We have the aperture ring over here, and this gives you a range of shutter settings from f22 to f3.5. We have the shutter charging lever here located on the side. Make sure when you're operating the camera just to use one finger. Sometimes you might be, if you're shooting it and you have two fingers here, you might interfere with the shutter lever, and that will slow down the shutter and give you an inaccurate exposure. On the bottom left here, we have a PC sync socket, which allows you to use a flash with this camera. You can use a modern flash with a Yashica rookie camera. You just need to follow the instructions on the flash. Most modern flashes allow you to adapt a PC sync socket. There's a flash chew located on the side here, or you can use a handle mount flash. You can even use some of the handle mount flashes off of old 35mm cameras. This is a standard 1/4" tripod socket, so flash accessories are very easy to use on this camera. On the left side here, we have the pins which hold the take-up spool and film spool. I'll describe how those work a little bit later when I describe how to put film in the camera. On this side here, we have the film winding knob, and we have the focusing knob. You can see the lens is moving in and out as I turn this knob. And on the back here, we have the film counting window set up for two formats. We have 6x45 on the side here and 6x6 in the center. On the top here, we have the focusing hood, which pops open like so, and inside you can see the glass focusing screen. The focusing screen on the Yashica Rookie has two lines, horizontal lines on the top and bottom, and this allows you to use the 6x45 mask. So you would just compose your image using those lines for the top and bottom limits, and that's what you should get on the film. There's a loop which pops out like so. You simply push the sports finder in like this, and this pops out the loop, and this magnifies the focusing screen so you can focus more accurately. To use the sports finder, you simply push the door down until it locks open, and you can see it's open. You can see the front window and the back window. And to operate this, you simply line up the small square so it's centered in the back square, and you can use the sports finder when focusing at things at infinity. That way you don't have to bother focusing the camera. All you have to do is shoot, just compose and shoot. So it's a quite simple system to use, and not that many people use it nowadays, but that's how it works. There's a release lever here on the back which you push to release the sports finder window. Push down the focusing loop before you close the focusing hood. Lots of people forget to do this, and they close this, and it can get jammed like that, and it can be broken, so be careful that you don't do that. Luckily, these have believe it or not, they actually have a catch on the back to kind of stop it from going down too far and not breaking it back. That's kind of an interesting engineering, a good attention to detail when it came to designing this camera. Who would have thought that they would have come up with an idea to catch this to prevent it from bending back and damaging the focusing loop? But apparently Yashica's designers thought of everything, or most things. Loading film in the camera is quite simple. You turn the ring on the bottom leftwards and simply open the door like so. You place a film take-up spool in the top chamber here. I always include a spool with a medium format cameras I sell, because these sometimes get lost, and you have to have a take-up spool in order to use a medium format camera. It's not like a 35mm camera where there's one which is built in. When you use one of these cameras, you load the film in the bottom, and your new roll of film will include a new spool. And after you shoot all the film, all your film will be on the old spool, and it will leave an empty spool behind. And when you take your film to be developed, you put the empty spool on the top, and you reuse it. And you just you get a new spool every time you use a roll of film. So to put in the roll of film, you pull out on the pin here and you turn it partially, and that will leave it locked in the pulled out position. That allows you to drop a roll of film, and when you put in the roll of film, make sure that the end of the film, the end of the paper leader, is on the top, or should I say on the bottom, but on the top if I'm looking at it this way, and pointing in the direction my finger is pointing. There aren't any firm guides in loading medium format roll film. It's very possible to put it in the wrong way. And often when I buy these cameras and they arrive to me, I find that they do have the film loaded the wrong way. And people sometimes sell the camera because it doesn't work. And it's not because there's a problem with the camera, it's just they loaded the film wrong. So when the film is inside, turn the pin until it locks in place. It'll snap back into place by itself. Pull the film up over the roller. Some people put the film under the roller. Just before I left, I got a camera like this, and someone had put in the film under the roller, and it had damaged the paper leader and caused the film to kind of bundle up in the bottom and seized up the camera, and it wouldn't work. So the film has to go over the roller, the bottom roller, and over the top roller, and then you feed it into the slot on the take-up spool. And then you start turning the take-up spool. What you want to do when you're turning the spool is kind of push along with your finger, making sure that the paper stays tight. And when it goes around one circle, it will usually be locked in place, and then you can start turning the winding knob itself, and the paper leader will stay put. If you don't do it this way, the end of the paper leader will not engage with the spool, and you'll be winding the film, but it won't be moving. It'll be just moving inside the paper. So you have to make sure that the paper leader is set firmly, and that you make sure that as you turn the winding knob, the paper is pulling across. You'll continue to pull or turn the winding knob. The paper will continue to pull up across until the alignment arrows show. So the paper backing on the film contains or shows the alignment arrows as well as the counting numbers. You turn until the alignment arrows are lined up with these two black arrows. You can't really see them because they're black. Some of these cameras, they paint them white. Sometimes they are orange or red, but they usually have marks here showing where to line up the film. Once it's lined up, close the door, lock it in place, open the film counter windows, and simply wind the film. And as you're winding the film, you look in the windows and you'll start to see warning marks. These can be dots, they can be stars, they can be lines, and what they do is they get smaller and smaller as you get to near the number. When they become small, that means wind more slowly, and then you'll see the number pop up. If you're shooting in the 6x45 format, line up the number in this window. If you're using the 6x6 format, line up the number in this window, and make sure that the numbers are precisely in the middle of these windows. That will make sure that you have good frame spacing. If you don't wind it all the way, sometimes the frames can overlap a little bit, or the spacing becomes very narrow. You don't want to do that. And simply, when the numbers line up, close the windows, and the camera is ready to take the first photograph. So to take the first photograph on one of these old manual cameras, the first thing you need to do is take a reading of the light. Now, if you have some experience in photography, you can do this just by looking. For example, today is a very bright and sunny day, and if I were shooting, say, 100 speed film, I would choose the 100 speed setting and turn my aperture to f/16, and that is the perfect setting for shooting at a subject in direct daylight. If there's less light, then of course I either have to slow down the shutter speed or open up the aperture. Now, this camera has a somewhat limited range of shutter speed, which is fine for a medium format camera. You don't want to use shutter speeds which are too fast or too slow. Medium format camera you can use with smaller apertures than you can with 35mm cameras. That allows you to get more sharpness and detail, and you have less problem with diffraction with larger formats than with smaller formats. So in a camera like this, I would usually try to keep the shutter speed at around 100 or to the maximum speed 1/300. That way, in daylight, if you're using, say, 200 speed film, that's a good range where you can walk around and take photographs handheld. If you're using a tripod, of course, you can use the slower shutter speeds or even the bulb setting for really long exposures, and that's something which these cameras are really good at. But let's just say today I'm shooting Fuji Acros 100 speed black and white film. I'll go ahead and set the shutter speed to 100. I'll set the aperture to f16. I'll go ahead and charge the shutter, and I will pop open the focusing hood and pop out the focusing loop. And I will focus on my subject. Say my subject is right there. And once I am focused, I will carefully compose, and then I will shoot. And I've taken my first photograph, so I'll go ahead and open the window and go ahead and wind the film and watch carefully. You'll see the counting, the marks, the lines or arrow circles or stars as they count down to the next frame. And when the number 2 is lined up right in the center, the camera is ready to shoot again. I'll go ahead and charge the shutter once more and focus, compose, and shoot. That's pretty much all there is to it. Luckily, these cameras are very simple, very easy to use, very little to go wrong with them. They're very well made and very reliable. So that's it for my video about the Yashica Rookie, my newer video. Hopefully this one has a little bit more detail than my previous Yashica Rookie video. My next video will come to you from Japan after I return. Hopefully I'll get that done, say, next Wednesday or next Thursday. If you'd like to see more videos, please subscribe. And if you click the like button, of course, that helps. That gets more people interested in this channel. And my goal with this channel is, of course, to get more people interested in vintage cameras and film photography. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you tune in again soon.